Okay, so we're going to go ahead and call Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development to order. I'm turning off my mic. Welcome to the first meeting of Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development for the 82nd session of the Nevada Legislature. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Here. Here.
Senator Neal.
Here.
I'll have Spellman to answer once. That's it.
Okay, so I would also like to welcome members in the audience who are here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, and all those watching or listening over the internet. If you have not done so already, please mute all of your electronic devices. I will also go ahead and open up for any public comment that is here in Carson City. Okay, seeing no one. If there's anyone on the phone for BPS.
Harry, your public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. And so I will move forward with committee introductions. For today, we're going to do committee introductions, adoption of committee rules, and staff presentations. The 21-21 session was busy for all of us, and the 2023 session will be equally as busy. I am Senator Dina Neal, and I represent Senate District 4 in Clark County. I have served 5 sessions in the Assembly between 2011 and 2019. This is my second session in the Senate as chair of Senate Revenue and Economic Development, and I'm honored to serve as the chair for this session in Senate Revenue. I want to go ahead and discuss that when the legislature passes a bill, it affects every citizen in this state, both now and in the often unpredictable future, and I take this responsibility very seriously. Some of the policy that we're going to move in this committee is going to be focused on modernizing our tax policy in the state of Nevada and trying to move the state forward in terms of issues that we need to discuss. Some might be controversial for citizens, but it's very important that we at least put the policy on the table to be vetted. Next, I'm going to have the committee members briefly introduce themselves, starting with my vice chair and then going right and then back left. So when you introduce yourself, please list your district, how long you've been in the legislature, and then also a fun fact.
Thank you so much, Chair Neal. Senator Fabian Doñate, proudly representing Senate District 10, which is in central Las Vegas. I was appointed last session and ran for my first full term. So I'm very proud to be here today and to serve on this committee. It's my first time serving on Revenue and Economic Development. And a fun fact is, in true Vegas nature, because I do represent the Strip, I have been trying to take DJ lessons. So we'll see how that comes out throughout the session.
Senator Gansert.
I can't wait. So Heidi Seavers-Gansert, Senator from District 15, which is the western side of Reno, or most of it. They kind of carved out a piece on the west that I no longer serve. Let's see, I've been in the state Senate since 2016. I served in the Assembly for 3 terms between 2004 and 2010, and was the Chief of Staff for Governor Sandoval during his first term for the first couple of years. And then, am I to fun facts or? Okay, so, and then fun fact is, I used to do triathlons. I still try to do them, but I have a foot injury right now. But I swam from Alcatraz to the Presidio a couple of times. So I've made that swim.
I thought there were sharks in that water.
They didn't get us that time.
Okay, Senator Spearman.
It's hard to top that. Yeah, I used to be a DJ, so we can talk. Okay. Anyway, I'm Senator Pat Spearman. I serve Senate District 1, which is located wholly in North Las Vegas. I was elected in 2012, and this is my 5th session. Let's see, I'm a veteran, and this is my 2nd time serving on Revenue and Economic Development. I served in 2015, and so I'm glad to be back. See, a fun fact is in 1985 Super Bowl, I was in one of the commercials with Garfield. It was the Embassy Suites commercial, and I think it's still up on YouTube. It's kind of grainy, but you can kind of see me. I'm in the last frame where, you know, Garfield is saying, "Ooh, something to eat," and I'm doing like this. I'm waving at somebody. So anyway, that's mine. I didn't swim from Alcatraz, though.
Senator Buck.
Thank you so much, Chair Neal. I'm Carrie Buck. I represent SD5, which is in Henderson in southern Las Vegas. I was elected in 2020, and I'm in my 2nd session, 1st term. I'm a 1st grade teacher at heart and an elementary school principal. And I guess my fun fact is in college, I supported myself by being a singing telegram and birthday character person. So,
Wow. Okay. So this has been one amazing fun fact adventure. I'm going to move to staff. Vital. See, yeah. Such a sad story. I don't really have a fun fact. I have a fun fact related to my sister because she just did it yesterday. She went skydiving and she jumped out of a plane. She's a pharmacist. And she sent me like 11 pictures literally before I came to committee. And I was just like, I don't understand what's happening. And she's just like, it's called Aquarian Monday. And I was like, okay, all right. So she's a very special human. But yeah, that's the fun fact for somebody else. But I will move to staff. Staff is a vital part of every committee. We have our fiscal analysts, and we also have our administrative team. I know they have bios that they want to share, and I think it's very important that everyone knows the qualifications and what they come in with. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Nakamoto first, and then going to Mr. Tower. And then I'll do Susanna Powers, and then I'll go to admin staff. So when you guys do your bio and you help us understand your expertise that you're coming with for revenue, at the end, add your fun fact. All right.
I was assured there were going to be no fun facts this session. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I am Michael Nakamoto, Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. As a reminder, Legislative Council Bureau staff is all nonpartisan. We are here to serve all 63 legislators equally. This is my 9th session with LCB Fiscal. The first 8 sessions were as a staffer for the Assembly Revenue Committee. This is my first session as in my current role as the head of the tax team. It is also my very first time staffing a Senate committee, so you might have to bear with me. I am, though, head of the tax team. Mr. Tower and Ms. Powers will introduce themselves, and we are here to serve all of you. I do not have a fun fact. You might have to come back to me on that, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Christian Tower. I'm a Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division, and I'm part of the tax team directed by Mr. Nagamoto. I started working for the Nevada Legislature during the 2019 session when I was a manager for the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services. In 2021, I then served for the Legislative Council Bureau as a program analyst on the expenditure side of the budget, and I dealt with issues of public and behavioral health. And now for the 2023 session, I joined the tax team to deal with all issues related to taxes. And my fun fact would be, I don't know if it's that funny, but as you probably have realized from my accent, I'm German, and asking a German for a fun fact is already a little bit mean. But when I was studying in Berlin, Germany, some while ago, I was basically working also in the legislature, in the German Bundestag. And so the fun fact is that I was also working before in a different legislature, namely Germany. And that is part of the experience I hopefully can bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powers.
Good afternoon, Chair Neal and the members of the committee. Susanna Powers, Deputy Fiscal Analyst. I actually staff Assembly Revenue, so I'm here to introduce myself, being part of the tax team. This is my first session. I am new to the team, not new to the state. I have 13 years of state service. I worked in the executive branch as an economist prior to my current position. And I do have a fun fact. I was born and raised in Finland. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. So I will now move to our committee manager, Siria Sosa.
Thank you, Chairwoman Neal and members of the committee. My name is Siria Sosa. I'm retired from state employment with the Legislative Council Bureau after 19 years of service. This is my 14th session in the Senate and previously with the LCB. I am committee manager to the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development, as well as legislative assistant to Senator Dina Neal. I am honored to work for Senator Neal, as I did for her late father, Senator Joe Neal. And the fun fact would be my family. I have 2 sons, Cesar and Alexis, and 3 beautiful grandbabies, Axel, Levi, and little Cesar. They are my greatest joy and sometimes a big nightmare. But when I Facebook with my 7-year-old Axel, he's always asking me, when are you coming back home, Grandma? And I tell him, 5 more months. And he asks me, but how many days? He is just a love of my life. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce myself and a little facts about my family.
Thank you. So now I will move to Ms. Janet Stokes.
Okay. I don't know who wrote this, but let's see here. My family moved to Carson City in 1957, and my parents loved it so much that we stayed forever. And I did take a 20-year break in the Bay Area. My youngest daughter, Gina, is deaf, and so we went to the Bay Area for 20 years for her education. When she went off to college in DC, I came back home. And since then, I've worked, gosh, this is my 10th session, the first 9 in the Assembly, and as an attaché. And I always, every time I say that word, I think of Peggy Pierce, and she came over and she goes, "Isn't an attaché a little suitcase?" It's like, yes, I'm not sure why they call us that, but. And then I retired after 13 years at the Secretary of State Elections Division, so I think that makes me resilient to something. And let me see, a fun fact. I love animals dearly, and I have a beagle, crazy beagle puppy named Lucy. So if you see me missing any heels or toes on my shoes, you'll know why. So thank you. It's an honor to serve here. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next, we'll have Connie Summers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Several years. Community College Board of Directors. And I'm very honored and pleased to have been selected to support you all during this session. Hope I can do a good job for you. Fun fact, before I came here, I worked as a personal chef. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. With that being, I guess, established with some very interesting facts, Mr. Nakamoto reminded me that I used to do this a lot. But it's because our committee is always seen as just a numbers committee and tax policy, and everybody's just like, what? It's just overwhelming. So trying to, bring it down to some normal level of interest, specifically for me, because I have a super sense of humor. We used to have Mr. Ginden, and I used to threaten him that I was going to wear I love cheese and tax shirts, or I love bacon and tax shirts. And, and he has also threatened me that one day he's going to come in like Carol Villardo and with a hat on and potentially have shoe boxes on his feet and post up and do public comment. So I look forward to us doing something completely outrageous in this committee that forces him to come into the building. So with that, we will move to committee rules. So the committee rules have been posted on Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System, NELIS. They are supplemental to the Senate standing rules regarding the committee, as well as sections of the NRS dealing with conduct before the legislature. They are not intended to replace committee rules in the Senate standing rules or in the NRS. Does the committee have any questions on the committee rules? Have you guys had a chance to look at them? Okay, so I will accept a motion to adopt the committee rules. So I have a first from Senator Spearman. Do I have a second? A second from Senator Dunyate. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And now we will move on to the housekeeping rules. There are a few housekeeping rules before we move on. The Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development is scheduled to meet 1 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And since our meetings meet in the middle of the day, we are limited as to how long we can have our meetings last. So we have a hard stop at 3 p.m. So please make sure in helping me to start the meeting on time. I ask that all members, unless excused in advance by me, be in attendance at all meetings from the time the meeting begins until the meeting is adjourned. I understand that members may need to testify as we get further into the session on their bills and other committees during our meeting time. Just let me know in advance. I want to emphasize the importance of courtesy in dealing with other members of the committee, staff, and all persons who testify before us. We must never forget that we are here to serve the public, and their testimony deserves our respect. But that's also a two-way street in terms of citizens who also want to come in front of this committee and testify. I expect courtesy and respect for the members who may present a policy that you disagree with. And I want to emphasize that because there have already been some very interesting commentary around this committee and the policies that may be brought forward. But I hope that we continue to operate with courtesy and respect towards all members. For everyone's information, items on the agenda posted for each committee meeting may be taken in a different order than listed. In addition, 2 or more agenda items may be combined for consideration, and an item may be removed from an agenda, or discussion of an item on this agenda, on any agenda, may be delayed at any time. Persons wishing to testify must sign in Before beginning to testify, make sure you present a business card to the committee secretary. As a reminder to all of those who want to testify pursuant to NRS 218E.085, it is unlawful for a person to knowingly misrepresent facts when testifying before the legislative committee, and a person who knowingly does this is guilty of a misdemeanor. Any person who is proposing an amendment to a bill being heard by the committee must first talk to the sponsor and let them know you intend to submit an amendment. If there is an amendment that's being proposed on a bill and I find out that you have not spoken to the sponsor, I will not accept the amendment. So, moving on, public comment will always be heard at the beginning and the end of committee meetings, and they're limited to 3 minutes. We have testimony always in support, against, and neutral. And with that, we will go ahead and move to Mr. Thauer and do the committee brief.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Christian Thauer, Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. Committee members should have a copy of the policy brief in front of them. The policy brief is also uploaded on NELIS as an exhibit, the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System. And there are copies of the policy brief also available to the audience in this committee room, lying right at the exit door. Committee policy brief is 27 pages long, and I will not go through the policy brief in substance. Rather, I will concentrate on giving an overview on what type of information can be found where in this committee brief. If committee members would go to page 3 of the committee brief, you will see section 1 of the committee brief, which contains basically a table summarizing the work of this committee during the 2021 legislative session. And as you can see, there were a total of 38 measures referred to this committee, 27 Senate bills, 2 Senate resolutions, and 9 Assembly bills. 26 of these measures were approved and reported out of committee. And 20 of these measures were reported out to the governor or filed with the Secretary of State. Of these 20 measures reported out, 19 were codified into law. A little bit further down on this same page, page 3, you find a section entitled Tax Legislation Enacted During the 2021 Legislative Session. And that session provides a general overview on the changes and new legislations that were approved by the legislature during the 2021 session relating to taxes and economic development. For example, you may have heard about a rate reduction of the modified business tax, and you may ask, or if one would ask the question, how did that come about? There's an explanation of this also here in the policy brief. You find different subheadings in this second section of the policy brief, and one is on page 4, entitled Court Decisions Affecting Bills Passed During the 2019 Legislative Session. And on the bottom of page 4, you find that. There's a paragraph starting with Senate Bill 551, and that paragraph starts explaining the rate reduction mechanism that's statutorily required in relation to the modified business tax. And that continues to be explained there on page 5, ending with a paragraph starting with based upon this action, and that is really where it is being summarized. So the actual collections in fiscal year 2022 of the modified business tax, the branch bank access tax, and the commerce tax exceeded 104% of the respective revenues of these revenue sources projected by the Economic Forum on its May 4th, 2021 meeting. And if that happens, so if the actuals in the even year come in higher than 4% than the forecast had it of the Economic Forum in the previous uneven year, odd year, then there's a statutory mechanism required by the respective chapter in the NRS that the Department of Taxation reduces the rates. And so the rates from July 1st, 2023, for the modified business tax non-financial business, is going to be 1.378%. It's going to be reduced from 1.378% to 1.17%. And the modified business tax finance and the modified business tax on mining rates are going to be lowered from 1.853% to 1.554%. And this is the type of information you will find in this policy brief. It is, as mentioned, structured according to various subheadings. You first have on page 3 background information on the tax legislations enacted during the 2021 session. On page 4, you have the mentioned subheading, subsection on court decisions. Moving on to page 5, you have bills regarding state revenue and taxes enacted during the 2021 session. This section really entails new taxes or changes to existing taxes. So, for example, the first bill discussed in this section on page 5, Assembly Bill 495. That was the Assembly Bill that in 2021 created the gold and silver excise tax. The bill also, as you can see on page 6, the last paragraph explaining Assembly Bill 495, the bill also entailed a provision that the entirety of mining taxes, namely the newly created gold and silver excise tax and the net proceeds of mining tax, will from July 1st, 2023, be allocated to support the state education fund, whereas before these revenue sources were feeding into the general fund. And I come back to that a little bit later when I'm going to give a presentation on the reference revenue manual. Moving on to page 8, there are bills regarding technical administrative changes. So these are changes of terms in law. The technical changes really for the administration of taxes. Then there are, moving on to page 13, bills regarding tax credits, exemption abatements, and postponements. This is everything related to economic development, which committee members find here from page 13 on. And then page 15 and page 13 have sections on local governments with respect to economic development and taxation. On page 19, committee members find a table with the jurisdiction of the committee according to the Senate standing rules of 2023. And you can see here, of course, in particularly Title 32, the Revenue and Taxation title, in the NRS, that's under the jurisdiction of this committee. And you see here the chapters from 360 to 377D. But underneath, you see that there are also some other, namely particularly economic development issues that fall under the jurisdiction of this committee. Moving on to page 20, there is a table on the key committee deadlines, which committee members will also find on the last page of the committee policy brief, which includes the 20-day session calendar. On page 20, starting, there's also a list of topics that are potentially of interest and relevance to this committee. On page 20, committee members will find the bills that have already been referred to this committee. And so far, I think as of this morning, these were 6. And from page 21 on, committee members will find a list of BDRs. Some of them have been turned into bills already that are of potential interest to this committee. And one note on this, as everyone is probably aware, at this point, BDRs are confidential. So we assembled this list entirely based on this publicly available description. Right, not about the real substance matter that's in the bill or in the BDR. So there may be changes of this list, right? Because some of these BDRs may turn out not to be really related to taxation that much. And others which are not on this list may come into the purview of this committee once they're introduced as bills and it turns out that they are related to taxes. But from what we can publicly see in relation to BDRs, in terms of the description and the title of the NRS they deal with, this is a list of BDRs that we as the tax team follow with respect to the work of this committee. On page 25, committee members will find a directory of committee members and staff for your convenience. And on page 26, there's another directory, namely of key contacts for this committee. So you find there the key contacts of the Nevada Department of Taxation and other revenue-relevant executive agencies and associations. And the committee policy brief, as mentioned, finishes on page 27 with a 120-day session calendar. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Members, do you have any questions? Okay, so seeing no questions, we will then move to the Revenue Reference Manual, and I'll turn the microphone back over to Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chair Neal. Again, my name is Christian Tower. I'm with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. As previously with the policy brief, committee members have a hard copy of the Revenue Reference Manual in front of them. The manual is also uploaded on Nellis as an exhibit, so it is also accessible to the general public. The manual has 337 pages, and as with the policy brief, I'm not going to go through it in substance matter. I'm rather going to try to answer the question, what type of information can be found where in the manual? And if you open it and look at the table of contents, it shows that the manual is structured according to different sections. So there's an appropriations and revenue chart section, then there's a tax revenue summary section. Section 3 concerns tax legislation history. Taxation information is section 4. Section 5 is tax exemptions, abatements, deferrals, so the economic development part of taxation on revenues. And section 6 and 7 deal with local government finance issues and fiscal notes, respectively. Quickly, if we go to page 1, appropriations and revenue charts. If we open this and see on page 3, there's a chart on Nevada General Fund appropriations by state function. And since we're here at the Revenue Committee, I immediately turn the page and come to the, for this committee, more interesting chart, namely to the Nevada General Fund revenue chart, which committee members will find on page 4. This chart basically is based on the Economic Forum forecast for the upcoming biennium. And it breaks down basically the anticipated Nevada unrestricted general fund revenue by tax source. And what you can see here in the chart, the blue part is the state tax, the sales tax in Nevada, which is almost a third of the tax revenues. In purple, you see the gaming percentage fee tax, which is about 16.1% of Nevada revenue anticipated in the upcoming biennium. Then there's a modified business tax, according to the Economic Forum's December 5th, 2022 forecast, will account for about 12.8% of the general fund revenues. And there's the insurance premium tax, which is anticipated to account for about 10.9% of unrestricted general fund revenues. Apart from these major revenue sources, you can also see a number of revenue sources which are in the 0.5 to 6% range, such as liquor taxes, cigarette taxes, real property transfer taxes, transportation connection excise taxes, and commerce tax. And then from this range on, there's also kind of a whole number of a multitude of taxes and fee-based revenues that are summarized here under other taxes and non-tax revenues. And so this gives us a structural overview on taxes in the state of Nevada. And if we move then on to page 5, we see this broken down in greater detail. On page 5, you have basically the Economic Forum's forecast revenue table, which resulted from the December 5th, 2022 meeting. And what you see here is over 5 pages, from page 5 to page 9, revenue sources, a comprehensive list of revenue sources that feed into the unrestricted general fund. And you see here the actual revenues generated by these revenue sources in fiscal year 2020, 21, and 22. And you see on the right-hand side of the table the Economic Forum December 5th, 2022 forecast with respect to these revenue sources. When you look at it, of course, a whole long list of revenue sources. But on page 5, on top, you see mining taxes, and you see there in the forecast in 2024 and 25, a zero forecast for the net proceeds of mineral tax and for the gold and silver excise tax. And the reason for this is, as mentioned in 2021, in relation to the policy brief, I mentioned that in 2021, an assembly bill passed that basically reallocated the revenues of these mining taxes from the general fund into the state education fund from July 1st, 2023 on. Also, to maybe break this quite busy table a little bit down, right under mining taxes, you find sales taxes, so the real big revenue source in Nevada. And right under the sales taxes, you find the gaming taxes, and particularly the percentage fee tax, which is one of the really large revenue sources here in Nevada also. Then on page 6, you find the modified business taxes, various ones. And page 7, on top, you find the insurance premium tax. And then the remainder of the table also includes all the smaller and minor revenue sources that, in combination, feed into the unrestricted general fund revenues as projected by the Economic Forum. In gray, on the bottom of table 9, you find also the tax credits that are anticipated to come in the upcoming biennium, which is also of concern, of course, to this committee as it concerns economic development. After page 9, you find comments on the different tax sources in this table. So so section 1 gives us a structural overview of state revenues in the state of Nevada. And then section 2 allows us to drill down to individual tax sources and get information on these tax sources. And it's structured in different letters. There's A, B, C, D, E, and F. And it starts with section 2A on page 19 with sales taxes. And sales taxes, as mentioned, are a very significant source of unrestricted general fund here in Nevada. What do these individual pages on individual taxes give us? They give us who administers the tax, who levies the tax, which agency, what is the tax rate, and to whom is this tax, the revenue distributed. For example, to the general fund, but it could also be to local governments or to the state highway fund. And these individual or these chapters in section 2 also give us information about where to find the legal references in the Nevada Revised Statutes. And if you look at page 19, there's a state portion of the sales and use tax laid out and detailed. And we see here there's a 2% state tax rate that feeds into the general fund. And that generated in fiscal year 2022, as we can see on page 19, more than $1.6 billion to the general fund revenue, which was in fiscal year 2022 about 29.2% of the total general fund revenue. The following pages on sales taxes include the local taxes, the mandatory local tax and the tax options. 21 includes the basic city-county relief tax. 22, the supplemental city-county relief tax. And these taxes, so the Nevada Department of Taxation gets a commission for collecting these taxes, and this commission is distributed to the general fund, but otherwise these taxes go to local government and are part of the C-tax, so the consolidated tax distribution account. And they are distributed to counties based on statutory formula. And I believe we may in this committee have at one point also presentations on local government finance, and on that occasion there will be presentations that go more into detail on local government taxes and how these taxes are distributed to local government. On page 23, we find the local school support tax. And that is a part of the sales tax that is dedicated to K-12 education. And that tax until June 30th, 2021, was basically deposited in the state distributive school account effective July 1st, 2021. All proceeds from this local school support tax go into the state education fund, and that is pursuant to Senate Bill 543 of the 2019 session. So we see generally a lot of the K-12 education is being rerouted from the distributed school account to the state education fund pursuant to this mentioned bill, Senate Bill 543 of the 2019 session. 25 includes the county optional sales taxes. Page 27 gives an overview on what counties choose as their county optional sales taxes. And then the section finishes on page 28 with a map from the Nevada Department of Taxation, which shows the overall tax rate by county. So the state 2% tax rate, the mandatory local tax rate, plus the county optional taxes, all combined make up the total county tax rates. And on page 28, you find a map that shows the tax rates by county. The next group of taxes that this part of the Revenue Reference Manual deals with are gaming taxes, and I'm going to be a bit quicker now. I think after I established the structure of what kind of information the manual entails. We see on page 31, arguably the largest tax revenue source from gaming taxes, the gaming percentage fee tax. And we see here that in fiscal year 2022, the gaming percentage fee tax was just under $1 billion of revenue generating, 17.5% of the overall general fund revenue of fiscal year 2022. And that reflects what probably everyone reads in the news, that we have every month now already for, I think, more than 20 months, gaming win revenues of more than $1 billion in Las Vegas, and these numbers are reflected directly in this gaming percentage fee tax. Then the section on Section B, gaming taxes, then goes on to describe a number of other gaming taxes, which I'm not going to go into detail in. And then on page 39, property taxes are detailed. And we see on page 41, that concerns real property. And real property, as probably many of you know, can be a quite complex thing to assess in the state, because the way they're set up is not uncomplex. And what you see here is the statutory limitations explained that are in the NRS on what counties, cities, towns, and special districts can levy on real property. On page 42, you have the whole issue of abatements explained. And on page 43, you see the distributions to local government, school district, and state bond fund. Page 44, you see the net proceeds of mineral tax. I already mentioned that from July 1st, 2023 on, the revenues generated by this tax will not go into the general fund, but they will be deposited into the state education fund. And that is pursuant to AB, I believe it was 495 in the 2021 session. From page 47 on, committee members will find a summary of excise taxes. There are a lot of these taxes in the 0.5 to 6% range that are detailed in this section. So you have a liquor tax, cigarette taxes, tax on other tobacco products, and then the cannabis taxes as well. On page 52, committee members find details on the wholesale cannabis tax, and on page 54, on the retail cannabis tax. And what's important to say there is that these taxes have or are allocated towards to support K-12 education. The wholesale cannabis tax has a $5 million portion that goes each fiscal year to local governments. It also finances the regulation and the administration of this tax. The remainder of the proceeds that come in from this tax go to K-12 education, and this has been going to the this has been going to the distributive school account, but this has changed as mentioned before, pursuant to Senate Bill 543 of the 2019 session. The remaining portion after all these deductions that go to K-12 education will be distributed to the state education fund. And that is also true for the retail cannabis tax, which entirely goes for K-12 education, and it will from this fiscal year on, actually from fiscal year 2022 on, this tax, the revenues generated by this tax don't go to the distributed school account anymore, they go to the state education fund. In this section, there's also transportation connection excise tax on 56, and on page 57, the mentioned new gold and silver excise tax that was created during the 2021 session. On page 59, committee members will find an overview on fuel and motor vehicle taxes. There's a gasoline taxes on page 61 described, and also the distributions where they go. So the State Highway Fund receives 17.65 cents per gallon mandatory state tax revenues. And then various local government road funds receive 5.35 cents of the state mandated tax, and then there are various optional local county taxes. And you find information on that in the following pages. In this section, you also find something on the governmental service tax, and I'm going to speed up a little bit. The last section here is section F on page 75. It concerns what's called other taxes. Some of these other taxes are really major revenue sources. Here in Nevada, this includes the insurance premium tax, which accounts for about 10% of the Nevada General Fund revenue. And in particular also, of course, from page 79 on the modified business tax. And also in these sections, you would have the rate reduction mechanism, which I explained in relation to the policy brief. You would also have that explained here. So overall, this section 2 of the reference revenue manual allows the reader to drill down onto the level of individual taxes and get information on who administers the tax, what is the tax rate, who levies it, how is the tax distributed, to what fund? Is it distributed to local government, to state, is it to the general fund, to the highway fund, or to other funds? And it also provides information on the legal source, where in the NRS the statutes can be found that govern the respective taxes. Moving on to part 3. This is the tax legislation history. And this part is structures not unlike, I described that in the policy brief. There was a section on recent legislation relevant to taxation. And that came out of the 2021 legislative session. And This part 3 of the reference manual, basically has this kind of report after each session from 1979 on. So there's a pretty comprehensive legislative history over the past decades on tax and economic development relevant legislation over the past decades of legislative sessions. And that is the largest part of the reference manual. It has almost 130 pages, or more than 130 pages. No, sorry, I got the math wrong. It's about 100 pages long. Then we have section 4 from page 229 on. There's a tax glossary. So this is a committee, like many committees, that has a lot of jargons and abbreviations, and a lot of these are basically here defined and explained in the tax glossary. From page 239 on, committee members will find important publications from the Nevada Department of Taxation in relation to taxation. So you find annual reports, data on various revenue sources, how and where they are accessible. And then finally in section 5 from page 251 on, the reader finds information on all kinds of different issues related to economic development. So there are tax exemptions, abatements, deferrals, and tax credits analyzed and laid out, where they are in the NRS and in relation to what taxes, and the structure is according to a tax source. So there's one section on exemptions, abatement, deferrals, and credits in relation to the sales tax, then in relation to property taxes, governmental service tax exemption, real property transfer tax exemptions, and so on and so forth. The reference manual closes with a description of issues on local government finance and the description of the fiscal note process. And with that, I would be happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions on the revenue reference manual? It's pretty much just it's like your revenue Bible. So if you ever want to look at something when we have a hearing and you're trying to understand, like they have LSST in the bill and you just need a quick, what is LSST? You could go there and just read it and then sort through the bill. So that's what it's been helpful for. So seeing no questions, we will move to, thank you, Mr. Tower. We'll move to Mr. Nakamoto, who will go over what happened during the joint standing interim meetings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division. And actually, before I move into the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Revenue Bulletin, I just want to make a couple of observations on the Revenue Reference Manual from staff's perspective. This is a document that we update every 2 years that we work on to get ready for the session. So this is the copy that is available for this time. It's always an educational thing for us to go through just to kind of relive what happened in previous sessions. So it's always kind of fun to put together. But what I would note is Mr. Tower mentioned the sales tax map at the back of the sales tax section. What I would also observe is the section with the Department of Taxation publications. That was actually provided to us by the Department of Taxation. I would like to thank Director Hughes and her staff for working with us to get that information and to allow us to include this within that document. So that having been said, the members of the committee who requested paper documents have a copy of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Revenue Bulletin, Bulletin 23-11 from our research library. The members who requested electronic documents should find this on Nellis. And so just as a little bit of background, those of you, since all of you were here last session, you'll remember that during the 2021 session, the legislature passed Assembly Bill 443, which was a restructure of the interim process for the legislature and the legislative process. And basically what that did is we had a few interim committees, such as the Interim Finance Committee and a couple of others that are statutory, but it more or less revamped that and created 9 separate interim committees, the Joint Interim Standing Committees, or as we refer to them, JISCs for short, because it's easier than saying Joint Interim Standing Committee. over and over again. So the ninth of those was the GISC for revenue. And the provisions in NRS 218E 320 required the formation of this committee with a total of 8 members. 5 from the Assembly and 3 from the Senate, with members chosen by the Speaker of the Assembly Minority Leader, the Senate, and Senate Majority and Minority Leaders got to choose members of the committee as well as alternates. So the 3 senators who were on the GISC were Senator Neal as the chair of the committee, as well as former Senators Dennis and Tatro, and then Senator Lang and Senator Severs-Gansert served as alternates for the committee. The bulletin contains just an overview of the statutes on page 1 that are relevant to the creation of the GISCs. So everything that I just basically went through there real quickly, that's really the gist of what the GISC setup was, rather than going through the entire 48 pages of AB 443. On page 5 is the introduction that basically goes through an overview of the 7 meetings of the committee that were held between January 26th of 2022 to August 29th of 2022. So the first meeting was an overview that had trends in state taxation. We had a presentation by Fiscal Analysis Division staff on the tax changes that were approved during the last session, as well as some discussion about the court decisions that affected the Economic Forum forecast. And then there were some presentations, some statistics on various taxes. And then it went on to the February meeting, which was primarily about the sales and use tax as well as liquor tax. And then in March, it was primarily about cannabis. And then in April was the commerce tax. In May was presentations about cryptocurrency as well as the relation between cryptocurrency and the gaming industry. The meeting on July 7th had to do with property taxes. And then on August 29th, there was a presentation on the other tobacco products tax, as well as a work session where 2 measures were considered. And those measures that were considered can be found on page 9. There were 2 proposed BDRs that were brought forward by the committee, one dealing with the other tobacco products tax, one dealing with the property tax. I would note that the committee approved the drafting of both of those measures, and those have already been pre-filed and have been referred to this committee as Senate Bills 95 and 96 respectively. So that is all I really had to go through on this. If there were any bigger questions about the committee or the specific items that were discussed, I would be glad to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nakamoto. Any questions on the interim of the GISC? Okay, seeing no questions, we will now go ahead and move to our second set of public comment. If there's anyone here for public comment in the audience in Carson City. Seeing none. Broadcast, is there anyone on the phone?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Okay, so this will conclude our meeting, and we will see each other on Thursday at 1 o'clock. We will hear presentations from the Department of Taxation. We are adjourned.